Myself, SM Mutt from Walchand Technology, Solapur. Today I am explaining regarding the some simple objects of the orthographic projections and principal planes and principal views. The learning outcomes of this topic is student will able to draw the orthographic projections. Today I am explaining regarding the orthographic projections. So in the orthographic projections, a imaginary plane, a transparent plane, which is parallel to your eyesight, that is called as a vertical reference plane. Plane which is parallel to your eyesight, a transparent plane which is parallel to your eyesight when it placed in front of you, or the object which is placed in the first quadrant. So basically there are two quadrant angle of projections are there, first angle projections method and the third angle projections method. So in the first angle projections method, vertical plane parallel to you and horizontal plane perpendicular to you, and you have to assume that you are in the first quadrant. So when this horizontal plane and vertical plane intersect with each other, you get a four quadrant. Out of that four quadrant, first quadrant, second quadrant, third quadrant and fourth quadrant. First quadrant, you have to assume that object is placed, whatever the images you get it, whatever the shadow you get it, whatever the view you get it, that is related to the first angle projections method, that is related to the first quadrant. If the same object, if it is to imagine that it is to be placed in the third quadrant, whatever the images, whatever the show, whatever the view you get it, whatever the shadow you get it, that is the third angle projections method. But nowadays worldwide recognizes to be first angle projections method. So that's why now whatever you have to draw hereafter, worldwide recognized that is the first angle projections method. So in the first angle projections method, object is to be placed in the first quadrant. That I am explaining here. So here, a imaginary plane, a transparent plane which is parallel to your eyesight, and this is the object. So this object which is parallel to in the first quadrant, and you are the observer is somewhere here. Whatever the ray starts from your eyesight, it collides with that object, and whatever the image you get it on that vertical plane, on that frontal reference plane, whatever the shadow you get it, whatever the image you get it on that plane, whatever the projection you get it, that is the first angle projections method, and that projection it is called as a front view. So it is called as a front view. So this front view, it is here. That is whatever the image you get it, that orthographic projection, and this orthographic projection is called front view projection. Now you are observer here. When you have to see that object and you are seeing in the first quadrant is to be there. Just I am explaining here. So it is a frontal reference plane. This plane is a frontal reference plane, and another plane is to be there, a horizontal plane. So it is a horizontal reference plane and it is a frontal reference plane, and whatever this image you get it here on that plane, that is a frontal reference plane, that is a front view. Now you can rotate it yourself through a 90 degree. You are an observer here. Okay, na? So this observer, when you have to rotate it through a 90 degree and see that object from the top view, whatever the image you get it here, that is in this here, in the horizontal plane, here, in this horizontal plane here. Whatever the image you get it here in this horizontal plane, that is the top view. So in the first angle projections method, you have to imagine that object is to be placed, this object is to be placed in the first quadrant, and whatever the ray starts from your eyesight, it get collides with that object. Whatever the image you get it on that vertical plane, that is a frontal reference plane. On that frontal reference plane, whatever the view, whatever the image you get it, that is a front view. That is a front view projection is to be there. Now in this first, just I am explaining here, the same object is to be placed in the first quadrant, and when you have to see from the top view, whatever the image, whatever the ray starts from your eyesight, it collides with that object, and whatever the image you get it on that plane, that is a horizontal plane here, that is a top view projection, and whatever the image you get it here, that is a front view projections. So this is related to the first angle projections method. So in the first angle projections method, the object is assumed to be situated in the first quadrant, and it means that in the first angle projections method, whatever the views you get it, whatever the images are you are getting, it is a reference line, xy line. Above the xy line, is a front view. Above the xy line is a front view, and below the xy line is a top view. So in the first angle projections method, is a first angle projection. So in the first angle projections method, whatever the image you get it, above the reference line, that is a front view, below the reference line, that is a top view. So previously here the object is to be placed in the first quadrant, whatever the image is, whatever the shadow you get it, that is a front view. Here you get it, that is in the front view, and here when you have to rotate it yourself through 90 degree and see that object from the top view. Here when you have to see that object, you get as a top view. Now another view, that is the side view. When you have to see that object, instead of you are standing here, you have to rotate it and see that object from the side view, from the left hand side view, from my left hand side. So my left hand side, one more thing, when you have to go for the side view, my left hand side view is right hand side of yours, exactly opposite. So I see that object, this left hand side view, but I draw on the right hand side, that is called as on a profile picture, on the right hand side view of the object. So in the first angle projections method, above the xy line, that is the front view, below the xy line, that is the top view, and side view. So here whatever the object, it is placed in the first quadrant. In the first angle projections method, we have to draw the front view. It is parallel to on that what you call frontal reference plane. Then you have to rotate it yourself and see that object from the top view. You get an image here, that is in the HP, that is in the horizontal plane. Here that is a top view, that is a front view. Now when you have to see that object on the side view, on the right hand side view or left hand side view, my side view, my left hand side view, that is observer's right hand side view, and my right hand side view is observer's left hand side view. So when I am going from the left hand side view, so observer is the left hand side view, that's why I am drawing this left hand side view on the right hand side and right hand side view on the left hand side. It is a right hand side view. So this is the first angle projections method. So in the first angle projections method, above the xy line, that is a front view, below the xy line, that is a top view. Left hand side, you have to see that object from the left hand side view, on the left side. You have to draw on the right side of the object, on that view. And when you have to see that object from the right hand side, you have to draw on the left hand side, because it is exactly opposite to the observer, exactly opposite. That is the first angle projections method. It is exactly reverse in the third angle projections method. In the third angle projections method, what happened? The object is to be placed in the third quadrant. So here below the xy line or above the xy line, here, that is the third angle projections method. Above the xy line is a horizontal reference plane, and below the xy line, that is a frontal reference plane. So here whatever view you have to draw it here, that is below the xy line, that is a front view, that is a third angle projections method, third angle projection method. It is a third angle projections method. So in the third angle projections method, front view is below the xy line. In the first angle projections method, front view is above the xy line. In the third angle projections method, top view is above the xy line, above the reference line, this is the top view. But in the first angle projections method, top view is below the reference line. That is the difference between these two. That is the first angle projections method and the third angle projections method. In the first angle projections method, you have to assume that the object is to be placed in the first quadrant. In the third angle projections method, you have to assume that object is to be placed in the third quadrant. So whatever the image is, whatever the shadow you get it, with respect to that, where it is to be placed, in the first quadrant or the third quadrant, with respect to that, you say that it is a first angle projections method or a third angle projections method. So that is a basic difference between the angle of projections. Because when you have to go for, when you have to draw the engineering drawing, engineering graphics, whatever you have to draw it, there are two types are there. That is a first angle projections method and third angle projections method. But nowadays worldwide recognized this to be a first angle projections method. It is recognized that first angle projections method means what? The object is to be placed in the first quadrant. Whatever the images, whatever the shadow you get it related to that, that is a first angle projections method. So in the first angle projections method, front view is above the xy line, that is above the xy line, and top view is below the xy line, that is below the xy line here. And in the third angle projections method, top view is above the xy line and front view is below the xy line. So that is a basic difference between the angle of projections. Means whatever you have to draw on that sheet, that is, these are the two types, that is a first angle projections method and the third angle projections methods are to be there.